Hey there, good evening. Welcome to Prog Monster. My name is Murph. I am the host of this show, a show dedicated to progressive rock and other forms of rock music. So this is my normal Wednesday night favorites show, which I do every Wednesday night at 8 o'clock. So this week we're doing an idea that one of my subscribers gave to me. So basically he said I should do a top, because I do a top 10 and I do a top 25, maybe do a top 15 favorite bands from various different countries. So what I've decided to do is I'm going to do 5 different countries, but I'm going to do them over the course of the next 4 or 5 months. I'm not going to do them every week. I don't like doing things like that all constantly, because then it kind of gets wearing, and then the country that's probably going to go last, I'm just going to be rushing through. I don't really want to do that. So we're going to do one, and then we'll do some other stuff, and then I'll come back and do the second one. I'm going to do 5 of them though, and that's going to be Britain, the United States, Canada, Australia, and I think we're probably going to do Europe. That's kind of how I feel like I want to go. And it may change, but those are the 5 I'm thinking of doing. So, and I'm not going to do all 15s. I think Great Britain is by far my strongest country for music, and so I'm going to do a 25 with them, and we're going to start with them tonight. I'm going to do my top 25 favorite bands from Great Britain, the Isles of my home. So they say. Anyways, so we're going to do the top 25 of those bands, and then I'll give some honorable mentions. I'm actually going to do 2 types. Sorry, paper's in the way here. I got 2 types of honorable mentions. One's from bands that I've listened to a long time, and then I'm going to put some new bands in there that I've been listening to a lot of, and who are more than likely, a lot of these bands will crack the top 25 British bands at some point in not too distant future. But anyway, so we're going to start by doing it the way I always do it, which is the 25th or the weakest or the least favorite. That's probably the best way to put it, right? Least favorite band of the 25 in the 25th spot. We'll do them first, then we'll work our way up to number 1. And then I'll give you them all back in the proper order, and then give you my honorable mentions. So I want to get this underway, so here we go. And I've got some props specially delivered just for this. Yeah, okay, whatever. Okay, so we have number 25. This one was a little bit of a debate, because technically speaking, this other band probably rates a little bit higher, but I haven't listened to them for so long, and I've not had any desire to listen to them for a while, so I decided to move this guy into 25th place. Now I'm going to take some heat. Oh, well, he's actually a member of another band. Well, yeah, but his solo career was as big as the other band. So we're talking about Phil Collins here. He will come in at number 25, and I think deservedly so. Probably should be higher, actually, but for today's countdown, we're going to go with him in 25th spot. Deserving easily to make my top 25 British stars. Okay, so then we have next up the madman himself, Ozzy Osbourne. Now I have to say that I haven't really listened to much Ozzy Osbourne song probably since this album. Actually, this may have been my last Ozzy album that I listened to fairly regularly. And I think this was his 3rd one. Yeah, I think it was his 3rd one. And so I haven't really followed much of his stuff beyond that point, but the first 2 albums really had a huge impact with me. Plus, he was from Black Sabbath, so I kind of think of him as one of the best rock singers of all time. He certainly is one of the best heavy metal singers of all time. And so he deserves, and his solo career was fairly big, and so I think he deserves to be mentioned here in my top 25. And so I put him in at number 24. Okay, so coming in at number 23, a band that's lost a lot of ground over the years with me, but still has enough of a great discography and some great songs and some legacy to come in at 23. I think that people have tend to blown them out of proportion. You think you were dealing with the Led Zeppelins of the world here, but we're talking about Queen. I know I'm going to take a bit of a hit for this, but I don't think Queen is as great a band as people believe they are. Yes, they have a fantastic vocalist. Yes, Brian May is a great guitar player. And the band's tight and has a lot of hits and stuff. But there's a lot of things about them I don't really care for either. But anyways, they come in at 23rd. And, some of these newer bands are probably going to knock them and some of the other guys out because they're just making impacts with me. But not enough yet to supplant these guys. So coming in at number 22, actually, originally I was going to put this band at 23 and Queen at 24, but I've been listening to these guys a lot, and I've been collecting a lot of their stuff over the last year, and even though I knew them well and had been listening to them for a long time, this stuff was really good, and I've been listening to it quite a bit. And we're talking about the Beatles. I know I keep choosing this particular album as a prop. It just gives such a clear picture of all four of them. And so the Beatles are coming in at number 22. Okay, so number 21, a band were basically the rivals of the Beatles, right? Quite a bit. For a while in the 80s, they were one of my favorite bands. They've kind of faded away, but there's a lot of stuff out there from them that I haven't heard that people have been pushing on me to do. And so I'm getting into the mood to start to listen to them again. So today they come a little bit higher than the Beatles, and we're talking about the Rolling Stones. Great band. Next band up is actually an artist, but to me, this is the top 25 British rock bands and artists, because I'm not going to do a top 25 artists, and they got to get included in here because there's too many good ones, especially from the British Isles. This guy, I know this doesn't really look like him because he's only 15 here, but this is David Bowie, coming in at number 20. A lot of really good stuff from Bowie. Even his deeper stuff, I actually, the more I listen to his deeper stuff, the more I like it than I do the head stuff. So, and he has such a kind of lengthy discography that I know that he's only going to grow in esteem with me. So David Bowie comes in at number 20. Number 19. I know a lot of people are thinking, because I like these guys so much and I love this particular album so much, that these guys would come a lot higher. You got to remember, even though I had that one album for years, I really didn't like it too much, and then I started really getting into these guys, and I like them a lot, but they still haven't made that much of a dent. But they're still coming in on this top 25 list, and that's Gentle Giant. Sorry, maybe the album should be held this way so you can see the name. This is a fantastic album and a great start for me with these guys after the initial not so great start with them. But I have a couple more albums coming up on the horizon, and I'm expecting this band to have a good year, and maybe they'll crack the top 10 at some point this year. That would be a notable achievement, I think, for this band. So number 19 today is Gentle Giant. Number 18 is Only Growing. I've been listening to them a lot. I listened to them a lot in the past. They have a lot of radio hits, a lot of stuff that's well known to me over the years. Their deeper cuts are even better. I'm enjoying this album that I got. This is the first album I've got from them, other than a greatest hits I had before, which I don't have anymore. But a band I've long liked, and they deserve a spot in this top 20, and they're going to be coming in, or top 18, they're going to be coming in at top 25, and they're going to be coming in at 18. This is The Sweet. This particular album is Desolation Boulevard. Great album. Okay, so next up, this is a band I've been listening to for, God, probably goes back to almost the beginning of my rock era, like almost to the beginning of, even around the Kiss era. Every once in a while I would hear one of their songs on the radio. I liked them a lot. Then in the 80s they started taking off, and then when this album came out I was really taken with them. And I don't know what it is about this album. I don't think it's their best album. I think they have some others in their discography that are going to end up being better to me. But for some reason, I really like this album a lot. Thin Lizzy's Cold Sweat, this Irish band. And I think the reason I like this album so much is because it may be their last. I don't see them doing any more ever. Not without Phil Lynott anyways. Anyways, great band coming in at number 17. A band that I think will continue to rise, might even crack my top 10. That would be, I think they'll crack the top 10 British bands. Whether they actually crack the top 10 overall, that's a different story. Okay, so coming in at number 16, and they barely beat out Thin Lizzy, is a band that I have a fair number of their albums. I listen to them. I used to listen to them a lot more than I do now. Yeah, some of their stuff's a little commercial, but their older stuff is really good. And I went through a phase. I tend to go in and out with these guys, so I may listen to them a lot, and then it might be years before I listen to them again. We're talking about Whitesnake. I picked this album as a representation because you can really see the name well. And, many people consider this their best album. It's not my favorite, but it's still a really solid album. So Whitesnake comes in at number 16. Number 15 continues to grow and have been very dominant with the first two albums that I've listened to. And I've been known about them for years, and I really think this band is just underrated and, underexposed. It's become more exposed in recent years, but it's got to be these guys, King Crimson. They come in at number 15. Just solid. They've had a good year, 2 years now with me, and they're just moving up really well. I like them a lot. King Crimson. Number 14 should come as no surprise. This is a band that probably is the prototype band for this site. This was the band that was right on the doorstep when I started this channel, and have been strong with me since the beginning. And this particular album, especially Nectar, Tab in the Ocean here. But their other albums are really good too. I really like this band a lot. The biggest surprise to me is that I never heard of them when I was in my youth, and never listened to them. And I'm sure that if I had, they would be right up there amongst my top bands now. So Nectar comes in at number 14. So that's my first stack. So my second stack is my top 13. So we're going to get right to it. This is a band that has continuously grown since I heard a live album that somebody gave me back in the early part of this century. So I think it was around 2003, 2004, and I started listening to it first just as background, and then I really started listening to it a lot, and I liked it. And then when I started this, I got this album quickly and another one, and I like their videos. I really like their vocalist and their guitar player a lot. Deep Purple. This was a good representation of their discography, maybe one of the best rock albums ever. So Deep Purple's coming in at number 13. I know there's people out there that says, what, Deep Purple should be a lot higher than that. Well, maybe, but this is my list, so I have to go on how I feel about them, not what I think people like. That just wouldn't cut it, would it? We don't want phoniness. We want honesty in here. Those are the qualities I feel are good, and that's the ones I'm going to stick with. So the next band has also grown. I liked them initially. I liked them a lot. I've always followed them. I've always kind of listened to them. And this particular album I love, and they've had a fairly good run recently for me as well, and that's Judas Priest. They're coming in at number 12, making the top dozen. So number 11. The problem with number 11 is that it has a lot of nostalgic value to me. I liked their stuff quite a bit when I was growing up. I haven't listened to them nearly as much as I used to. They probably will drop fairly significantly over the next year or two, but for today, they still rate fairly high with me, and that's Rainbow, and this is one of the great albums of all time as well, Rainbow Rising. Okay, this is a band who I've been getting a little bit more into lately. Now, I was right into them when they first came on the scene. I was listening to them a lot, and it kind of got away from it, and I've come back to it, and they've kind of moved up a little bit each month. They're not really dominating for me right now, but they have a lot of great stuff about them I like. I love the members of the band. I love the artwork on the band. The songs are very memorable. Some of my favorite songs are by them. They definitely deserve to be where they are in the top 10 British bands of all time, and that's Iron Maiden here. I chose this album. I'm not really sure why. I've not actually even taken this out of the sleeve and listened to it yet, but I've been listening to other stuff by them, so I kind of like to concentrate and then move along. So this one will be up soon, though. Its turn is coming. Okay, so next up is a band that I've long liked. This goes back to my teenage years. I've always listened to them. Their albums have grown and continue to grow. They've had a bit of a lull spot over the last decade or so because I've listened to everything I can. Until recently I found something I hadn't. So, long have liked their music, and that's this group, Supertramp. I chose Breakfast in America because it's probably iconic. Most people are going to know immediately what this is when they see it. So, great album. Great group. Okay, so number 9. That was number 9. Supertramp was number 9, sorry. Number 8. So from here on up, we got some really strong groups for me. Groups that have either been strong all along, or have been very strong and have maintained themselves up there, or were strong and are now coming on again. And we're going to start first with this group, Pink Floyd. Yes, the iconic Dark Side of the Moon here. This is a great band, and my esteem for them is growing as I listen through the new discs that I've gotten. A lot of their discography I never heard before because for some reason I just never seen it, or I never got around to it. And they were a little bit of a latecomer to the scene with me, although I heard and had listened to The Wall when it came out. The Wall is actually an album I don't care for, but the rest of their stuff I've liked quite a bit. So Pink Floyd, Dark Side of the Moon here, but overall, great band coming in at number 8. They could be the next band to break my group. Instead of being group of 8, it could be group of 9. They're close now. Next up, another band, same thing. Pretty much always have listened to them, but unlike Pink Floyd, I liked them at the beginning, and they've just stayed on a pretty steady course most of the years. Recently, I added a couple of albums that I had never owned and hadn't listened to all the tracks, so I knew some of their stuff because you could not hear it on the radio, but they've grown in esteem, and now I'm listening to a double album by them that I had never fully listened to before, and I'm liking it a lot, so it's gonna help them a lot in talking about this band. Of course, Led Zeppelin. I chose this album because I love it. It's my favorite of theirs. Okay, next up, now we're getting into the remaining 6 bands here are all in my group of 8. That's how strong Britain is with me with music. 6 of my group of 8 are British. And we're going to start with this one first. Another vocalist from the Genesis catalog. This is Peter Gabriel this time. Phil Collins got 25th. He gets 6th. I think the thing about Peter Gabriel is I love his music much more than Phil Collins' music. I just like his voice better, and he's more innovative in his sounds and stuff like that. There's nothing wrong with Phil Collins, but I think he is really strong in one particular area of music that it's not necessarily the kind of area that I like. So, but I love Peter Gabriel, man. He's fantastic. Love all his albums. Next up is a band that's in recent years had a new album and now is talking about another one. Wow, 20 years without one, and now they're going back to backs here. But that shows you how strong the vinyl and how strong the album industry is starting to grow a little bit again, where it was kind of dead there for a while. So, because these musicians would not do this if they weren't going to get money. You can count on it. Anyways, this album cover aside, fantastic album. Just like a great, what do they call this? A great album by a legendary band, Jethro Tull here. You know, really, it's just, some people say it's just Ian Anderson, but it has that Tull sound to it. There's no doubt about it. But anyways, Jethro Tull will come in at number 5 here. This is a band that's been as high as number 3 for me, and a band on the rise, probably might overtake some of these iconic bands ahead of it, just because there's so much of their discography I hadn't even listened to. I think I only had the 5 albums, and they were still in my top, my group of 8. But now I've got about 15 of them, so they're just rocketeering up the charts there. So next up, a band that is the only band with 6 masterpiece albums for me, and a couple more that probably will eventually be masterpieces. So we'll have like 8 of their discography. Nobody's going to come close to that. So they just put out album after album that was fantastic. And then of course we're talking about Black Sabbath. Many people view this as the really first heavy metal band. You know, I'm not going to debate that, but there's a lot of blues rock here too, and a lot of hard rock here, and there's even some progressive elements, especially in the Sabbath Bloody Sabbath album, and a little bit in the Volume 4 album. There's quite a bit of progressive stuff there before they got Dio and kind of went really heavy. So anyways, this is a fantastic group. They come in at number 4. I've been listening to them now since 1980, pretty much continuous. There's never really been a lull, and maybe a couple of years in the 90s where I really wasn't listening to any rock music much, but other than that, they've been pretty consistently up there. The next group, my number 3 group, not so much for their albums. This is the one band that's a little bit different. There's a couple bands that I like a lot that it's not so much about their studio as it is about their live stuff. This is one of them, and maybe the biggest one, and you all know where I'm going with this. I don't have this super affinity for their albums as much as I do for their live performance. So their albums they maybe haven't achieved quite the status that a lot of groups at this level would. But I love this band. They don't actually kind of fit in this discography too well either. They're a bit different from a lot of the bands, but they put out a really good album after a lengthy period where they hadn't, and then they went another lengthy period and put this album out, which is even better. This is one of the best albums released in the past 5 years, so far as I'm concerned. And this band has just put out, you know, this album is probably my 3rd or 4th favorite by the band, who has such legendary albums, right? So really great. The Who come in at number 3, well deserving to be number 3. They might slide a bit now as some bands are starting to grow quite a bit and they don't have quite the discography, but with the Who, it isn't so much the discography, it's the history, the individuals in the band, the live performances, just a lot of stuff about them that equal up to where they are. So the Who come in at number 3. Number 2, this is a band that I had 2 albums that I listened to a lot of from them for the first decade or 2, and they were the only ones I really listened to from them. And I went on to some solo stuff by various members of their band that I'd listened to, but I never got into their past discography until after my daughter was born. And I had the albums, I bought them, they were sitting on the shelf still wrapped a decade after I bought them. That's how little music I listened to in the 90s. And but once I started listening to them, I just fell in love with each of their discs in succession. Was just better than the previous one. We're talking about Genesis, of course. Their 1970s stuff, especially the stuff with Gabriel, and the first 2 albums by Phil Collins on lead vocals are among the best rock albums out there, I feel. And this band is in third. They've challenged for number 2. Well, they're second here, sorry. They're in number 2, and they challenged number 1 over the last few years, but both of the two groups don't really have any new discs coming out, so it's really hard for them to get beyond that. I love this band. Peter Gabriel aside, even without him, I still love them. They just have everything that I love in music, and they put it out in such a great fashion. And then we get to my number 1 British rock band. They were at one time my number 1 band overall, but they've slid over the years. They haven't really done anything spectacular or mind-blowing for me since Drama. That's 40 years ago. And this is one of the greatest albums ever, this particular one. But they have had some decent albums in that time period, like between 1980 and now. They've had 2 or 3 albums that I like. I like them, but nothing really spectacular, you know. I keep hoping that the next one they do, they'll kind of take on a sound that is so much like them, but you know, they're passing away faster than flies, so unfortunately that's the case. Everything has to come to an end, but they are still a fantastic band with a huge number of discs that I love. So there you got it. Yes, and they're at number 1. So we're going to reiterate them now from top to bottom, and then I'll give you some of my honorable mentions, because I know there's a few bands that people know I've been listening to a fair bit, and they're probably wondering why they're not here. Well, it's not that I don't like them. I like them a lot, but they just don't have enough longevity to crack this lineup. This is a tough lineup here. Many of these groups, almost all of these groups I've been listening to for more than 4 decades. You know, it's going to be hard to crack that lineup. So we'll do first, number 1, Yes. Number 2, Genesis. Number 3, The Who. Number 4, Black Sabbath. Boys from Birmingham. Number 5, Jethro Tull. Number 6, Peter Gabriel. Number 7, Led Zeppelin. Number 8, arch rivals Pink Floyd. Sorry, I just like to say that. I used to have those battle of the bands all the time. They were always the last 2. Supertramp. And at number 9. Number 10, Iron Maiden. Number 11, Rainbow and their Rainbow Rising album. Number 12, Judas Priest. And number 13, Deep Purple. Not a bad band in that stack, I'll tell you. Lots of good music and lots of good times with those guys. Now the second stack. Relatively newcomer, past couple of years. Nectar coming in at 14. Number 15, another one in the same boat. King Crimson. Number 17, a long timer. Oh, sorry, number 16, Whitesnake. Then number 17, Thin Lizzy, the Irish. The Irish. I like the Irish, right? Number 18, The Sweet. Number 19, the much over or underappreciated Gentle Giant. Number 20, David Bowie. Number 21, the Rolling Stones. Number 22, the Beatles. This may be the only time that the Beatles have come second to the Stones ever. Number 23, Queen. Number 24, The Oz, The Madman Returns. And number 25, Phil Collins. So for honorable mentions, we have, let's see what I got. I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I have 6 honorable mentions from bands I've been listening to periodically over the history of some of them actually been fairly high at different points in time. And then I've got 5 new ones. So we'll do the 5 new ones first, actually. So of the 5 new ones, most of them I've have it. All of them except for one, I have at least one album from them. A couple of them I have a couple albums from, but they've all been recent discoveries. When I say recent, like over the last year, and I've been listening to them a fair bit, so I want to give them some due here. So one of them is Camel, who we did a video on yesterday or the day before. I think it was the day before. We actually did 2 in the last week or so. Hawkwind is another band, which huge discography, but I only have the one and I've been loving it. I'm listening to it a lot. Atomic Rooster, same kind of predicament as Hawkwind. They're both about the same. They're both on my playlist. Both one of their albums. They're both growing in esteem. I like them both a lot. And then the Ben's Album Challenge guy, IQ. I love that album, and now I have another one of their albums that I'm going to put in my playlist shortly. And then Palace. Now Palace, I've only listened to one album once, and I already put them on this list. That's how much I like the album. It was so good. So I'm hoping that they'll be a band that I can really get into quite a bit. Okay, so some of the other honorable mentions include Marillion. Marillion has a couple of really strong albums with me, but I haven't listened and I haven't enjoyed them for a long time, but I still like those 2 albums a lot. Cream, this is a band that I liked a lot more when I was younger, but I will be honest, I am just tired of listening to Ginger Baker's bitching and whining and moaning, and it just, every time I think of Cream, it reminds me of him, and I get in a bad mood, so I don't really want to mention them too much. The Pretenders could be more of a US band, but they do have a British element, so they're probably half and half, so I gave them some attention here as well. Police, of course. The Police are a big influence on my favorite band, so yeah, I have to mention them here. They belong here anyways. Paul Simon, another musician I like quite a bit, and I have some new stuff from him I haven't listened to, and it's just giving me that kind of remembrance. I just like his whole vocal style, right? Nazareth, another band who I have a album. This is the only one I have from them, but I have liked some of their other stuff, and this one is, pretty good too. The next one, and the other band is the Kinks, which I surprisingly don't have any Kinks albums. That surprises me. I had several in LP, and I like a lot of their stuff, and in fact the stuff I like from the Kinks isn't necessarily the 60s stuff. I liked more the 70s stuff. That was the stuff that I was introduced to. That's my Kinks stuff that I like, and at one time they were a band I listened to a lot, and I haven't listened to them much over the years, and every time I go out I end up not getting any of their albums, which is kind of weird. I gotta change that, because they definitely deserve some attention here. This is a band that definitely was in my top 10 at one time, but just from neglect or from lack of listening to, they just kind of faded away a bit here. But they still deserve to be mentioned. So there you have it. My top 25 favorite British rock bands and artists as I see them and how I feel about them. I mean, you have your own opinions about these bands. You may have a completely different list than I have. That's great. Maybe you have different experiences with some bands than I do. Maybe you have bands you've been listening to that I didn't even know about, or maybe you just don't like my taste. That's fine, whatever it is. But the point is that we're sharing this stuff together, and we're keeping this stuff alive, and that's what it's all about. So I hope you like this episode, and please subscribe. It's much appreciated, and you have yourself a good night, and enjoy the video. Bye.